Hello and welcome to Paranormal at the Boneyard. My name is Kyla and I shall be your hostess for this show. Um, if anybody out there is watching, and I sincerely hope someone is, but if there's anybody watching who is a regular viewer of the podcast Boneyard, then you might recognize me as I have been a guest on that show a few times. And I guess TJ just liked the things that I said because when he said that he wanted to start a paranormal vlog and wanted to know if I wanted to be the one to do it, I was like, yes! Oh my goodness, yes, because I love everything paranormal. So I was like, right there, I'm right there, absolutely. So I've got my cheat sheets, and I'm a little bit nervous, but that's okay. Being nervous is all right. And I guess I shall begin. I'll start with a little introduction of me and what I do personally. My name is Kyla McCall. I am a professional photographer. My photography, I consider myself a generalist because I will photograph just about anything. But at the same time, I like to specialize my photography in cemeteries and derelict structures. So buildings that are falling apart and, the cracked wood and the peeling paint and the rust and just the dingy, dirty. I find the beauty in that and I love to photograph it. So basically my thought is I find beauty where other people might just not even notice it. They turn and walk away. So that's where I specialize, but I do photograph portraits and weddings. I do all that other stuff, fun stuff too. But yeah, if it's breaking, I apparently want to take a picture of it. So, in addition to that, I'm also a writer and a lyricist, and I am also an actress and a singer. I've performed in film and on stage. So I guess it's fair to say that I am a lover of the arts. And I am just in the beginning stages of starting another podcast and a production company, a music production company. So not only am I a lover of the arts, but I am extremely busy. So yeah, it's gonna be a little crazy, but bear with me, and I hope you enjoy my stories. Basically, I'm obsessed with the paranormal. So when this opportunity came and TJ was giving me a forum, I'm like, I'm there. I'm so there. In particular, my love is ghosts. So I know I probably might stray from ghosts from time to time and talk about, psychic mediums or premonitions or dreams or cryptids like Sasquatch or something like that. But I know I'm always probably going to go back to ghosts. 99% of these vlogs will probably be ghosts. So if you like the ghost stories, you'll like this show because I'm going to sit here and blab about ghosts for a long time. So I probably won't do UFOs though. So if you're an alien buff, I'm sorry because that's not my thing. I'm not really into it. But we'll try. We'll see what we do. Basically, they're going to be stories that of my personal experiences. I've had a lot, a lifelong experiences with ghosts, just little tidbits of experiences here and there. And if I don't have a story of myself personally, I will talk about famous locations that are known to be haunted, or I will talk about other stories that have been told to me or stories that I've read that are ghost stories that could be famous, or they could just be, just like my stories. They're not famous, but I find them interesting. Sometimes, if the weather suits it, I will go out and have a good time and wander around and maybe take you to the location, and I'll talk about my experiences or the experiences that I know of at the location. But on days like today, when it's pouring rain and it's really cold, I will not be going outside, and you will get to enjoy me sitting in my apartment. So, if you like me long enough, when the weather gets warmer, you'll see me outside more and more. So here we go. Right now, I am in my home, and I have had many, many experiences here. So being my first vlog, I decided to stay close to home and talk about the experiences that I've had here. Now, I have always believed in the paranormal, to the point that to me, it's not paranormal. It's just normal. My whole life has had experiences with ghosts and premonitions and dreams that, premonitory dreams and things like that. So to me, the quote unquote supernatural is just natural. It's just normal. It's never been anything but. Basically, I think my first ghost memories come from when I was 4 years old and I lived in a farmhouse. I was an only child at the time. My parents had rented a farmhouse, and I can still go there. It's a beautiful old house, really, really, really old farmhouse. It was a dairy farm, and there was a lady that was there. And to me, she just came with the house. I knew she wasn't a living person. I didn't have a word for ghost at 4 years of age, and I didn't have a concept of death, so I didn't really think of her as anything but a lady who was sometimes there. She just sort of, she was like, she came with the house. That's basically how I looked at her. So I knew she was there. My parents never told me. They didn't want, they thought I would get scared, so they never told me, but I knew she was there. But my mom had a story of this lady where she was looking in the mirror. She was fixing her hair. My mom used to have really long, beautiful blonde hair, and she used to braid it. She'd be in the mirror and she'd be braiding her hair, and she said she saw her. This is years later, after we no longer lived there, she told me this story. She said she's braiding her hair and she's looking in the mirror, and she saw a woman in 19th century clothing standing behind her. Her hair was in a bun. She had a dress on, and she was watching my mother braid her hair. And my mom said as soon as I turned around to look, she was gone. And then she looked back in the mirror and she was gone. So that was her first experience with that lady. Apparently this lady also liked to rearrange the furniture in the kitchen. And I do remember that. I do remember coming in, we'd go out to dinner or something like that and come home, and the kitchen table would not be over here. It would be over here. Like some of the stuff would come out of the cupboards and be put in different cupboards and things like that. So it was a little silly. And I'm assuming now that this woman just did that because this is the way she had her kitchen and this is the way she wanted the kitchen. And I think after the third time I noticed this happening, my dad finally lost his temper. And he's like, look, this is my house and I like it the way I've put the kitchen. So stop rearranging everything. And after that, it stayed the same. So she never rearranged anything after that. So that was interesting. Being on a farm in the summertime, naturally, you're going to have flies. Lots and lots of flies. There was one summer that I was there. I remember it was horrible. It was super, super hot, super, super humid, and there was those black flies just everywhere. And in my bedroom one time, it was so bad that I couldn't fall asleep because you're sitting there and you're lying in your bed and all you can hear is and they're just flying around just above your head and they're landing on you and you're freaking out. And I'm a 4-year-old girl and I'm like losing my mind because these bugs are everywhere. And then I saw the lady at the doorway of my room. And I calmed down a bit and she came in and she looked at me and she said, "Don't worry, I'll handle this. Just go to sleep." And I went to sleep, which is rare. Even as a child, I had trouble falling asleep. So I'm not a big sleeper. So the fact that she was like, "I'll handle this, just go to sleep," and I did, is shocking in itself. And when I woke up in the morning and I look over, in the corner of my room is a pile of dead flies. And I was like, ew. But it was like this woman was like, "I'll take care of it," killed all the flies and put them in a pile in the room. So I went to go tell Mom. She came up and they were gone. So in the time that it took for me to get out of bed downstairs, tell Mom that there was dead flies in a pile in my room, she came up and they weren't there. This woman, I guess, maybe got rid of them. Where she put them, I don't know. Don't really want to know. But that was a long time ago, so hopefully those flies are all up in insect heaven or wherever flies go to die. I don't know. And the only story that I have to tell, it doesn't have anything to do with the lady. And for me, again, it wasn't scary, but it was scary for the person I was with. It was one day where my parents decided they were going to have like a date night and they were going to go out overnight and spend some time together alone without their new daughter, who was, an attention freak. So, but my aunt babysat me. And she was going to stay overnight. She was going to sleep on the couch. I was going to sleep in my room. And we're watching TV, and all of a sudden you're hearing, it was just like a chopping sound coming from the basement. And I honestly don't remember too much of this. I remember the conversation I had with my aunt, but I don't remember these men that I'm going to be talking about. I don't remember what they look like. But it was like chop, 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 chop. And my aunt's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "They're chopping wood." Like, I'm looking at her like, "What are you, stupid? They're chopping wood," right? And she's like, "Who's chopping wood? Like, who's chopping wood at nighttime in a house where we're supposed to be alone," type of thing. And I'm like, "The men who live in the basement." And she's like, "What men who live in the basement?" So I'm just like, and I'm looking at her like, "Are you dumb? It's the men who live in the basement. They're chopping wood. They always chop wood." I remember this conversation. Honestly, I don't remember seeing men chopping wood in the basement ever. But I remember this conversation. And to her credit, this is something I would not have done. She got up and went down to the basement to see this. Now, if this was happening to me and I and I heard chopping wood in the basement and the kids looking at me like, yeah, there's men who live in the basement chop wood, I would not be getting up and going downstairs to check this out. I would be grabbing the kid, leaving the house, on the phone calling 911 at the same time saying, there are people chopping wood in the basement of this house. So, but to her credit, she did it. So either she was crazy or she was fine with everything. But she went down to the basement and she said, there's nothing there. There was no wood being chopped. There was no men down there. The axe was in the spot that it's supposed to be in. She had no idea what I was talking about. So she came back upstairs and she's like, there's nothing down there. And I'm like, well, they'll be back. Like it was like, man, don't worry about it. And sure enough, as soon as she sat down, we started watching TV again. The chopping started again and she freaked. I'm like, don't worry, they're not going to hurt you. But she would not let me go to bed. I had to sleep on the couch with her that night and she never babysat me again. So yeah, those are the stories of my memories of the farmhouse. I'm sure there are many more. I'm sure my dad probably has a whole bunch that he never shared with me. But that's my introduction to the ghost world that I can remember, was when I was 4 years old. Now let's fast forward to this house that I'm in right now. It was my grandfather who built this house in 1960. And the land obviously is very, very old and it's full of energy. Before the house was here, it was farmland. And I know long before that, this area was a great big indigenous campground. So there were archaeologists here because my grandfather, when he was building the place, found some stuff that needed to be, looked after and things like that. So, so there's lots of energy here. And as far as, I don't know what happened before I was born, obviously, but I've always felt the energies here. Whether it be people who are a part of the family or whether they were people who were a part of the land, I've always felt energies here. And when my dad bought the house, and we all moved in, so it was a house that was with myself, my two brothers, my parents, at the time my great-grandmother, and my two grandparents. So we had 8 people living in this house. So it was chaotic, but there was energy and it was great. And then for me, the experiences just sort of ramped up a lot. So there was lots of little experiences, a couple of extremely personal experiences for me. And yeah, so I'm just going to sit here and tell you a few of those stories if you don't mind. My father we're renovating the house. There's just my one brother, myself, and my father living in this house now. So he converted the basement into an apartment, and that's basically my living quarters now. I live in the basement, but I have lived in all sorts of different rooms in this place. So it's been interesting. So I guess we'll get to the first story I've got here. Oh, yes, the proverbial, mischievous ghosts where things go missing and then reappear where they weren't before. So the one story I've got in particular is my wallet. I had to go out one time and I lost my wallet. I couldn't find it. It was supposed to be in my bag, wasn't in my bag. So I spent, I think, maybe an hour searching for this thing, going upstairs to where my bedroom was at the time, downstairs, all around the house, everywhere. I went out to the car. I was looking everywhere for this thing and could not find it. Now, when I lose something that I really, really need to have, I'm okay maybe for the first little while, but then I start to get angrier and angrier and angrier, and then I really lose my temper and just start to go ballistic because I can't find this thing. So it waited until I got to the ballistic point of this, and I found it. I found it at a spot that I had walked past back and forth, about maybe 10 times while I was looking for my wallet. I walked past an office chair that we had, and it was, here's the office chair and here's the wallet, and it was like this, balanced on that, like that. And it was one of those office chairs that was curved. There's no way this wallet could have just been sitting there this whole time without me knocking it over or not noticing that this thing's, perpendicular to the chair. So I firmly believe that someone was playing a game with me and messing with me and making me mad. And then when I got really mad, it said, okay, here you go. So that was exasperating. So I'm usually I'd like to call myself a seer. I usually see energy and see spirits, as opposed to hearing them or feeling them touching me, which I'm not fond of, but has happened a few times. But there was one time it was very, very clear. I was in the kitchen, I was washing dishes, and then all of a sudden I was hearing in the backyard, just out from the back window from where I was washing the dishes, a young girl singing. And it sounded like just a sweet little lilting tune of a hum. It wasn't she wasn't singing words. She was just like doo, 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 doo. You know, very lilting, very soft, sweet. I thought somebody was in the backyard. So I go out in the backyard and there's nobody there, and when I come back inside, there's no more singing. So I was very, oh, that was interesting. I wonder what that was. And when one of my brothers came home, I told him about it. I said, it was really weird. There was like this little girl and she was singing, and he went, oh, you mean this? And he sang the exact tune that I had just heard maybe an hour before. So I was not the only one that heard this tune. So he's like, oh, I've heard her several times. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So, and then at one point, my great-grandmother had passed away by this time, and I had moved from a little tiny room to her place, which was a much larger room up in the upstairs. I don't want to say the attic, but it's like the room above the garage. That's what we'll say, the room above the garage. And it was a great place. I still love that room up there. It's a lot smaller than this place that I'm in now, but I love that space. It's now our home gym. But so I do go up there a lot still, but after she was gone, I moved up there and everything was fine. And being a photographer, I have a lot of photographs that I hang up on the walls. And I had a photo that I had hung up, and it was actually a photo of me that I just really liked. And it was very rare for the time for me to like photos of myself. So I was like, I like this, you just hang it up. You're just like, oh, I look so good in this picture. And I come home one day and it's on the floor. And I was like, okay, well, that's strange. Because it's one of those ones that you got to go and hook over. It's got the string, and I'm like, okay, the string's not broken. You'd have to actually lift it up and put it down, and then put it on the ground. And I was like, okay, the nail's fine, everything's fine. Okay, this is just weird. It's something weird that happened, whatever. And I hung it back up. I come back, being out, come back, and again, and this may be 2 days later, exactly the same thing. It's off and down. And I'm like, okay, this is strange, because I know for a fact that there's no way it doesn't just poof, it doesn't fall down unless the string breaks. And the string has not broken. So you actually have to lift it off, because you have the nail in at an angle like this. So you've got to lift it off here and pull it down, put it down. So I was like, I'm don't quite get what's going on here, but okay. So I picked it up and put it back on the wall. And then it happened a third time. But not only was it up and down, it was facing the wall this time. So I was like, okay, whoever is up here with me right now, I like this picture. I don't care if you don't like this picture. This is one of the few pictures of me I like. I like it hanging up on the wall. Please don't do this anymore. Leave it on the wall. Never came off the wall again. Never fell off the wall. Nothing. Never, ever came off the wall ever again. So, I find that interesting. And, in the same room, I was dating somebody at the time, and I'd like to say this was my great-grandmother expressing her distaste for this man that I was dating at the time. So, he was, this is back when you had tube TVs, so I had this little tiny tube TV in the room, and I was getting ready for us to go out, so I was in the washroom washing my face or brushing my teeth or something like that. And he was not only a skeptic, but he was like the skeptic that said, you're stupid if you believe in this kind of stuff. So I don't know why we were together, because we had nothing in common. But so he was like, it's all bullshit, and it's not true, and all this kind of stuff. So I'm in there and I'm brushing my teeth and whatever, and I had this little glass egg. It was just a little sphere made of glass, and it was always resting on top of the TV. Never had moved, never had problems with it whatsoever. Now, I only heard the noise. I did not see this, but I heard the boom, 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 like a roll. And I sort of look out of the washroom and I see my boyfriend, and he's like, his face is like that. And I'm like, what? And he's like, what the hell just happened? And I said, what are you talking about? And he told me, he says, the glass egg that was sitting atop of the TV came, lifted up, traveled toward him, fell at his feet, and then rolled. He's like, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I went back to doing whatever I was doing in the mirror, and he's like, no, you don't understand. It wasn't like it just fell off the vibrations of the TV, it fell off and rolled at me. He said it lifted, came at him, and fell. And I'm like, well, maybe my great-grandmother doesn't like you. It was just like, that's all I said. And that was the end of the conversation. But looking back now, I do wonder, maybe she didn't like him. So who knows? We have had some animal activity in here. I'm one of those people. I believe that animals can sense spirits. You know, we've always had cats here. We've had one dog here. And, you know, sometimes you see them and they're just looking at something, and you look at that thing, and I don't care what people say, oh, they're just seeing dust, or they're seeing a bug, or they're seeing something that you can't see. Yeah, they're seeing something that you can't see. It's called, you know, spirits or something paranormal. I don't understand why people have such difficulty believing that, because it's like, well, if they can smell things we can't smell, and they can see things we can't see, well, what's to say that they can't sense the spirits that we can't sense, right? So, and I had an experience with my very first cat. His name was Putty. And I consider him my familiar. I didn't choose him. He chose me. He came home with me, basically. It was just like, I had to have this cat. And he was my very first pet that I ever had. And he's still with me. He's been gone since 2009, but I believe he's still with me, and I believe he's my familiar. I really do. He's always been a part of my life, and I have felt him on my bed when I'm by myself, and I believe it's him hopping up on my bed and walking around, because the way he used to do it. And there was a time when I was in my room, or in the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, and our kitchen has two doors that go out. There's one over here, and there's one over here from where I was sitting. And he was sitting on the bench beside me, and I was having, I think it was a sandwich or something, I don't know. But he just started staring at this one door, and his eyes got really wide, and then his hair started to poof up. And then he just started hissing, and I'm looking, and I'm like, what is he? There's nobody there, sweetie. Like, I'm like, I don't know what he was hissing at. I don't know what he was looking at, but he was just like, you know, he was just going crazy. His tail was all puffed up. I'm like, it's okay, you know, and I calmed him down. But I've never forgotten that. And that's one of those things where it's like, you know, they see things. I think he was trying to protect me from whatever it was that was there. And I think, aside from that, I mean, that startled me. His reaction startled me, because I didn't sense anything and I didn't see anything. So whatever he was seeing disturbed him, and his reaction to whatever it was what disturbed me. But there was one time, and it wasn't like it was terrifying and it left me running out of the room or anything like that, but I was very uncomfortable with this one thing that happened in this house. It was in the morning, and I was in the kitchen, and I was getting breakfast ready for myself, and out of the corner of my eye, and I do have problems with the, you know, people see, oh, I saw something in the corner of my eye. It's like, yeah, that happens. That doesn't always mean it's paranormal. But I have very good peripheral vision, and I distinctly saw a form of a man standing in the doorway that leads to the backyard from the kitchen, and he's just standing there with his arms at his side, and I couldn't see any features. It was just black. And it was like he was just staring at me. I could feel, you know, when you feel somebody looking at you, that's what it was. He was just staring at me, just unmoving, nothing, just staring at me. And originally I thought it was my brother who lives in the house with me, and I thought he had maybe come upstairs, and he was just standing there staring at me, and I'm like going, okay, this is kind of freaking me out. Why is he just standing there? So I was like, and this went on, it felt like a long time. It probably wasn't. It was probably just a few minutes, if that, but it felt like it was like 10 minutes that this thing was there, and I'm trying to ignore it, going this, and you get that really feeling. That's what it was. And so finally I look over, nothing's there. And I am 100% certain that there was someone standing there watching me. Silently, no noise, no features, just the black shape that I saw. That's the only one in this house that really kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. That kind of was like, ugh, I don't like that at all. But even then, it wasn't terrifying to me. It just was like, okay, I'm not quite sure what that was, but we're going to go with it. I want to end this now on some very, very personal stories for me. There was a period in like the mid 2010s that was very bad for me. And I lost some people that I love dearly. In 2015, I lost my grandfather, who meant the world to me. I absolutely love this man. He understood me when nobody else did, and he meant everything to me. And then in 2017, when you think it can't get any worse, I lost my mother, and that was, I think, probably you take the grief that I felt for my grandfather, multiply it by about 10, and that was the grief that I felt for my mother. So it was not a good time in my life. But I do think that these people have come back to talk to us, to try and communicate with us every once in a while. I know that Mom was nearing the end of her illness. And it was maybe a week before the time came. And I'm sitting there. She was on this side of the room. I was on the side of the room. And there's a hallway that comes down this way. And I saw my grandfather, who passed away 2 years earlier, coming down the hallway. Now, normally when I see spirits, they're like a solid form. There's nothing, that I look at and go, oh, clearly that's a ghost. To me, they're just solid forms most of the time. It was maybe because he already knew that I knew he was gone, so I knew he was going to be spirit, but he was very misty. So I don't know if he was trying to materialize and just wasn't quite making it, but I only saw him from the torso up, and it looked like he was pushing his walker like he used to do when he came down that hallway, but I couldn't see the walker. I didn't see anything below his chest, and it was a haze. And as he's coming up the hallway, and then he faded away. And I thought, at first I was comforted. I was like, oh, great, Grandpa's here to say hello, and he's here to comfort us in this really trying time that we have. And then it changed from that to, okay, maybe not. Like, why is he here now? Like, it was like, then I started to get worried. I was like, is he here for Mom? Like, I started to kind of freak out after that. I kept it to myself. I obviously didn't say anything to anyone about it. But sure enough, within a week, my mother was gone. So I couldn't help but wonder, like, was he here to help my mother ascend? And I couldn't quite figure out why, because, it was just one of those, wouldn't it be her own father, her own biological father? Why her father-in-law? But then at the same time, you don't know. In the spirit world, we understand apparently more than, just because in this life he was the father-in-law, maybe the souls have been intertwined and been other relations in other lives. I don't, that part of, I have trouble understanding. So it's just one of those things where it's like, he was here, but at the same time, to add insult to injury during this time period, 1 month to the day that my mother died, my grandmother died, which was my grandfather's wife. So maybe he was here for her, I don't know. I really don't know. Or he could have been here for both. I really don't know. I just know that I saw him. At first I was comforted, then I got scared. And now I feel comforted again, because it was like, okay, at least it was somebody that knew and loved us that was here for them, if that's what he was here for. And obviously when my mother passed on, it was an extremely, extremely stressful, difficult, sad, tragic time in our lives. And, but there were things that I took notice of that I found interesting, like within the first few days of her being gone. And the first one being, I walked up, my room was at the very top of the house by this time, and I had gone upstairs to I think it was just to go to bed. And we have these little night lights around the house that if the power goes out, the lights come automatically on, so that you're never in complete and total blackness if we lose power in this house. So we had those in the hallways, and as I'm going upstairs, at the top of the stairs, the nightlight that was supposed to be in the plug in the outlet in the wall was in the middle of the floor. It wasn't like it, not that it would, they're pretty and they're pretty hard, but I mean, it wasn't like it just fell out. it was in the middle of the floor. I thought that was odd. But I thought maybe my father did it. I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure why Dad would do that, but he's not thinking straight right now, so maybe this is something that makes sense to him, and, if I remember, I'll discuss it with him later. Well, I didn't remember it, but he did, because he asked me the next day, he's like, why did you take the nightlight out and stick it in the middle of the floor? And I'm like, I didn't, I thought you did. He's like, why would I do that? And I'm like, so that was interesting, and it made me wonder if, I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. So if there's something that needs to be said, let's say it. So nothing was said, but on the day of my mother's funeral, this really got me. This one really, really, really got me. I was downstairs doing whatever. I was getting ready to go, I guess, and my father came down and he was extremely angry with me. He had come down from his room and he was like, why were you going through your mother's things? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, why would you go through her things? And I'm like, I did not go through anything. I'm the type of person, I respect people's privacy. I do not go through people's wallets. I do not go through people's purses. I do not enter people's bedrooms unless they invite me in. Even if I'm doing laundry and it's like my dad's laundry and I put it in his room, I feel weird just walking in his room to put the laundry down. I do not like going in other people's spaces. I don't like invading their privacy. So the idea that I would go through my mother's things, I found very insulting, actually. I'm like, I did not go through Mom's things. He's like, every single one of her jewelry boxes is wide open. And I'm like, I didn't go through anything. I didn't go in your room. I didn't open any jewelry boxes. So he was very angry, obviously, of course, but I let it go. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I wonder if Mom was looking for something. I wonder if she was going through, she had a habit of losing her engagement ring. So I started thinking, I'm wondering if she's looking for her engagement ring. So, that's something. And my dad eventually found it. So it's been found. But I can't help but wonder if that's what she was doing. And it was like, because I didn't go through her stuff. Dad didn't go through her stuff. So the only other person who was here was my brother, and he definitely wouldn't be doing that. So it was one of those experiences that I was like, all right, it's Mom. She's saying something. She's doing something. Okay. The most personal for me when it comes to my mother is a story about a magnet. There's a magnet that I bought for her when I was a child. And it was a magnet you put on the fridge in your kitchen, and it said Shelly's Kitchen. My mother's name was Shelly. It said Shelly's Kitchen. A hug would make my day, and it's still up there to this day. It's still up on the fridge. After she had passed on, I was walking by, and it flew off the fridge and landed on the floor. And I was like, what the? And I looked down, and it says Shelly's Kitchen. A hug would make my day. And I was like, put it back on the fridge, didn't say anything, and just went on my way. And so I'm thinking it was my mother giving me a hug, because it had never fallen off the fridge before, and it has never fallen off the fridge since. So that was my most personal note. Since then, I have smelled her on occasion. She had this cream that she used to put on. I've smelled the cream quite often. And I talk to her all the time. I've sensed her. And most recently, in the past couple of weeks, we've lost our dog, and she was here. I actually saw a glimpse of her when the dog was sick. So I'm thinking maybe she might have been here to help our dog cross the Rainbow Bridge. I don't know. Or she was here for my father to support him, because he took the death of our dog very bad. But yeah, it was pretty crazy, and I think she's been around a lot. So on that personal note, I think it's time to say goodbye. I have babbled on quite a bit now. So I hope you enjoyed listening to my ghost stories. I have many, many, many more to share, and hopefully some of them will be on location. And feel free to leave comments. If you don't like what I'm saying, tell me how to improve it. If you do like what I'm saying, tell me to do more. If you have a haunting experience that you want me to talk about, let's go for it. And just remember, just because you don't see it with your five senses, just because you don't notice it with your five senses, doesn't mean it's not real. So on that note, I will bid you adieu, goodbye, have a great night, and I will talk to you again very, very soon. Bye, everyone.